what's up you guys? This is Gabby. What are we going to talk about in today's video? So today is going to be a very special video because this is the most asked questions I have been getting over the past several months. I have scoured through my comment section and I've looked for those questions that have come up time and time again, and I hope this video will give you guys the opportunity to finally hear me answer those questions. These are some really good questions, you guys. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Okay, so the first question I want to touch on is, can you get licensed if you just get your bachelor's in social work? The answer is yes. You can become licensed with just a bachelor's degree, but I think there may be a little confusion because you aren't able to be a licensed clinical social worker with just your bachelor's degree. In order to actually be a licensed clinical social worker, you need a master's degree. But with just a bachelor's, you can become a licensed social worker. And this will allow you to have access to more jobs and a higher salary as well. And I think related to this question, people want to know, generally, when you're doing macro social work, do you need an LCSW? Now, a lot of people who have been following me for a while will already know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna tell you here again. I am not an LCSW and I don't need it for my current job doing corporate social responsibility work the way I do it. It's not really a requirement. It would not really be an incentive for me because it wouldn't lead to a higher salary or anything like that. As I mentioned in other videos, as a macro social worker, I don't really even work amongst a lot of other social workers, and the type of work that I do, it's not clinical based. It's not working directly with people one-on-one, so it's not really a requirement for me. Could it benefit me? I mean, I don't know, probably. But the thing is, for me, I had to do a cost benefit analysis. And since at my job, there is no one who could supervise me during the process of getting, my 3,000 hours of supervision, which is a requirement in order to become a licensed clinical social worker, I would have to go outside and work with an outside social worker to get those hours. It would cost me out of pocket to become an LCSW. That's 2 to 3 years of time, that's money. And if in my current role, it's not necessary and it won't really lead to me getting a pay bump or having more jobs that I'm interested in being accessible for me, then it's not really worth the time and the money in my specific situation, because I don't really see myself doing anything clinical in the future. That's not really the route or the goal that I have. So it doesn't make sense for me. But if you're a macro social worker and you know that you want to have the chance to do clinical work or therapeutic work after several years doing macro work, like if that's something that you have a goal to do, then it probably makes sense for you to go and get your LCSW, even though you also want to do macro social work. But for me, I don't really see that in my future. Okay, so another great question that I always get: do I recommend any good books or websites that social workers can go on to expand their knowledge and learn more about the field of social work? So I don't really have any social work specific books, but I do have book recommendations that I think would really help a social worker to be more well-rounded and aware of certain issues that social workers may face throughout their practice. So let me get that list and I'll be right back. And some of you who have watched a lot of my videos may already have heard me recommend these books, but the first one I would recommend is a book called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. I have a whole book review that I've done on this channel talking about my feelings about this book. I just think it lays a great foundation for understanding people, why we think the way we think, why our certain society and culture is structured the way it is, what events have impacted the way societies are structured. It's just a really fascinating read that helps you to understand humankind in general. And I think since we're social workers and we're working with people, that's important information to know. It's a big book, but it's also a very quick read as well. Okay, and the second book I would recommend, which I've talked about in a few other videos, is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Now, I am currently in the process of reading this book a second time. I read it before around the time when it first came out in like 2009, 2010. But I think where we are currently in society, it's super relevant. So I'm just refreshing myself on a lot of the information that I learned in this book. And I think it helps me to really better understand where I lay on the spectrum of policing in the United States. And that's important for all of us to really be thinking about right now, because I think our current climate is ripe for these type of conversations. And I think there are going to be, legislation and laws that we can vote on coming down the pipeline very soon related to this issue. So I would recommend The New Jim Crow. Every social worker should read this book at least once. Okay, this book may seem a little odd to recommend to a social worker, but I would also recommend How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is by Dale Carnegie. This is a very popular book. I'm sure some of you guys have already heard of it before. Last week, I actually spoke to a class at Eastern Michigan University. It was a class of social workers, and one of the students asked a very great question. They asked, how do I deal with pushback as a social worker when I'm bringing certain ideas forth or bringing certain recommendations around how we can do community work better? And I think that was a great question, because as a social worker, you're going to get pushback. People are going to argue with you, and they're going to wonder why more attention should be given to populations that social workers work with, who are often seen as second-class citizens or people that are unimportant, unproductive in our society. So you will have to influence people and try to persuade people to see your point of view, especially when you're doing community work or project management, program management work, where you're going to be working with a group of stakeholders. The book by Dale Carnegie gives you great insight on how you can go about persuading individuals and influencing individuals to see things from your perspective. I really got a lot of great takeaways from that book, and I feel like what I learned in that book will help me both in my career as well as in my personal life. And then the last book I would recommend, specifically for social workers who are interested in more therapy and clinical, is a book called Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb, I think. This book is super awesome because it gives you very insightful firsthand experience and knowledge about what it's like to be a therapist. Lori goes through her journey working with her clients. She gives you insight about what therapists may be thinking about during their sessions and how they may be processing what their clients are telling them, and also how a therapist is impacted by their clients. And she really does give you that insight or opening into the world and mind of a therapist. So definitely recommend that book. I definitely cried a few times during this book. Obviously that question made me super excited, but let's move on. Someone asked me to touch on some of the negative aspects of being a social worker, because I think this person thought that maybe I talked a lot about positives but not so much about negative sides. I want to quickly go through it here. Maybe I should do a whole video on this, but for the sake of this video, I do want to touch on it a little bit. I think some of the negativities is the perception that social workers get, the perception that we are one-dimensional and only work in certain jobs, such as maybe casework or even therapy. I think a lot of people think of social workers as just doing direct practice, and they don't understand how broad and diverse the field of social work is, and that can just lead to a lot of misunderstandings. I also think often social workers are not seen as important as we really are, and that can lead to us getting a lower than desirable pay, especially compared to other professions. That's one of the downsides. Another negative, kind of touching on what I talked about earlier about how sometimes people don't value the work that you're doing because they don't care about the people that you're serving. So that's often a struggle and often can lead you having to prove yourself or prove your worthiness to people who don't really see your worth. Do I have any other negatives? I think honestly that's the main negatives that comes to mind for me right now. Overall, I like the field of social work, obviously. Lately, I've been getting a lot of questions about getting a doctorate in social work or a PhD in social work. I've been getting questions for people asking me, is that necessary or do I ever plan to get it? So answering the first question, It's definitely not necessary. Most people in the field of social work never get a PhD or a DSW in social work, a doctorate of social work. This route is more for people who are interested in research and teaching future social workers. So if that's something that you want to do research that can push the field of social work, then maybe getting a doctorate of social work is a good fit for you. But if you want to be a therapist or work a job in social work, you probably don't need a PhD. More than likely, you honestly won't. I don't think I've ever seen a job description say that they are looking for someone with a PhD unless it was a role in a university as a professor or a researcher. Okay, and I get a lot of questions with people asking me, can you do a video explaining the differences and similarities between fill in the blank and social work? So whether that's between human development and family studies in social work or political science in social work, journalism in social work, etc. The answer is I can't, you guys. I am not informed enough and I don't have the personal experience to give you a video about a certain field versus social work because I never went and got my degree in journalism or political science or something else. I can give you a video on sociology versus social work or psychology versus social work because those are all areas that I've studied before. So I can give you the pros and cons and I can talk to you about the differences and similarities between those fields, but not a lot of other fields that you guys asked me to talk about. I'm really flattered that you guys think I have all of this knowledge on, different fields and areas of study, but honestly, I just don't. And that leads to another question I often get, which is, which direction is best for me? Should I study this or should I study that? Or it's usually, should I study X, Y, and Z or should I study social work? And I just don't know. Simply from the comment section, I can't really gauge what your strengths are, what type of personality you have, what your interests are. So I can't make that decision for you. That's something that you have to make on your own. Or as I mentioned before, I do have career counseling services that you can take advantage of and we can talk through that together. And I can help you to create a plan so that you can take steps to get to a point where you are more clear. But through the comment section, when I don't know you, it's hard for me to give you any information about what career or area of study is the best fit for you. So people often ask me what I think about getting your MSW online. My views on this have changed because with the current climate, everything is kind of moving online. In-person classes, I think you get a stronger connection with your classmates and your professors. You're able to build closer connections with people. I think it sparks better conversations, more insightful conversations, and better opportunity for learning when you are in person. However, I think now that a lot of things are moving online, we are all going to get better at connecting online, via Zoom and online platforms. So I think online schooling will definitely be more on par, in my opinion, with in-person schooling within the next few years. But right now, I would say that, if you can have in-person schooling, that's always going to be a bit more ideal, and I think you're going to get a better experience from that. But if you can only do online, that's totally fine. At the end of the day, you're still going to have your degree as long as it's through a reputable university, a certified college and all that. As long as it's certified, I say go ahead and do your online training if that's best for you, because some people just don't have the opportunity to go in person for one reason or another. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. And make sure if you are going through an online program, you still have the opportunity to do your internships and your field placement, because that's important and it's something that you can't do online. And it's such a huge part of your MSW experience, getting that field placement, getting that experience working for a social service organization. Okay, another question I get is what is the difference between an LCSW and a licensed master of social work? And I will preference by saying the term LCSW and LMSW is called different things in different states, but I think LCSW and LMSW is the most popular titles. Typically an LCSW is a licensed clinical social work certification, and this is what I talked about earlier, where you have to get 3,000 hours or 2 years or so of supervision to be trained to provide therapy and clinical work. But the LMSW is that initial license that you get after you get your master's degree. In some states, you have to take a test in order to get your LMSW. I think in the state of Texas, if I'm not mistaken. But other states, like in Michigan, it's really just, filing paperwork and proving that you indeed have your master's degree in social work. Your LMSW is what you would get first, and then if you're interested in an LCSW, that would be the secondary process that you go for later down the route after you get your supervision. Another question I get a lot is, what school did I attend? So I got my master's of social work degree from the University of Illinois at Chicago. I enjoyed my master's of social work program overall. I have videos where I talk about my experience, and I'll make sure to link those somewhere. But yeah, overall, I think I got a good experience. I think it's a good school for people who are specifically interested in more macro level social work. I got a lot of good training in that school on macro social work, and I met a lot of great professors. I was able to get some research experience. I was able to make some pretty cool connections with both students and professors. I like the fact that the school is located in the heart of a big city. I think that helps you to get more exposure to real world experience. Yeah, overall, I had a great experience, and if I could do it again, I think I would choose the same school. And I also get questions from people who are really nervous about getting their master's of social work degree. Maybe they've already applied or they're in the process of applying, and they just want to know simply, is getting your MSW hard or easy to do? These are people who are just like, please give me an answer. I need someone to help me to stop worrying. Just to kind of give you like a general answer, I would say that it's definitely manageable and it's doable. It will expose you to a lot of new ideas. Some ideas may be uncomfortable for you if you're not used to talking about racial issues, different systemic issues, and more progressive ideologies, I would say. The only truly difficult part, I would say, like if you're talking about the actual work and getting through the work, is all of the readings you have to do and taking the statistics classes. I think math and stats tend to be a little bit difficult for social workers just because we're not used to thinking with that part of our brains. Make sure you take advantage of the tutoring opportunities within your university or school, and you can do it. It may not be the easiest, but it's definitely doable. I did it. I'm definitely not like a math person. I was able to find a way to get through it, and it's important information to know. Having at least a general basis of how to do research, how research is conducted, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of programs, even though learning about it may be a drag and it may not be the most fun. It's important information and you just have to know it. There's gonna be a lot of reading, but I think you will eventually learn how to best digest the information in a way where you don't have to read it word from word. Learning how to skim and scan readings is gonna be an important skill for you to learn as you're getting your MSW, because it's just impossible to read every assigned article or assigned chapter. You would do nothing else in your life but read. You will learn the effective way to read through this information and to gather the most important parts. And once again, definitely utilize your study skills center. I'm pretty sure all colleges have these centers. Yeah, I would say that is what I think about it as far as level of difficulty. The biggest challenges are reading, getting through your statistics courses, and being open-minded to new information that may shock you or make you feel uncomfortable. But anyways, you guys, that is it for this Q&A video. I hope you guys were able to take away some new information. Let me know if you have any other questions or if you want me to expound on anything. I can definitely do these Q&A videos more often if this is a format that you guys are interested in. I hope you guys stay healthy, keep your spirits up. And on that note, I will talk to you guys in the next video.